All right, it's a bowl edition of the One True podcast. Hit with me is Zach Smith. Zach, how are you?
It's I feel like after like a football season, at least last year, I was ready for football season to be done with, right? But like this year, like football never sleeps. And apparently neither do I, because with signing day and now a bowl game, like it's Baylor football 24/7. So it's great to be here as always.
Yeah. Obviously, they moved signing day up this year, and we had kind of a crazy run through November into December. So hopefully, we'll be able to come up for air a little bit in these coming weeks. But yeah, let's talk about the bowl. Obviously, Baylor headed to the Texas Bowl against LSU down in Houston, NRG Stadium, or as my stepdad calls it, NRG Stadium.
Nerd.
NRG. Uh, so you didn't get your wish of going to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, eating some Pop-Tarts, but what was just kind of your reaction of Baylor headed to the Texas Bowl?
I think it's the best option for them. Like I think if they were the other ones they were up for was Liberty Bowl, which would have been I think a lower tier SEC school, or the Rate Bowl, which is against a Big Ten school that they probably would have killed. So I think this gives them it's a mix of close proximity, which is good for get some fans there. A good opponent. I think LSU until the last half of the season was right up there fighting for a playoff spot. It definitely got the talent, and I think it's at a good time where they can kind of stand out. It's good for recruiting. So I think all things considered, it's kind of a home run bowl game. It couldn't have gone much better, aside from maybe seeing Dave Aranda eat a Pop-Tart. That's what we're missing out on. But all things considered, it's a good bowl game.
Yeah, they were probably not a serious contender for the Alamo Bowl, but that would be the other one that I think in that same realm that you're talking about in terms of close proximity, an enticing matchup. Although I guess it would have been against another Big 12 school, so maybe less so.
It would have been nice to see Baylor, Colorado Part Two.
Yeah,
I know
I would have loved to seen that again, but
Colorado got the Pac-12. I think they're technically a Pac-12 school in that bowl. That's why it's Big 12 versus Big 12.
so
But
crazy.
whatever, I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, LSU is what you got, and at least we get the Dave Aranda Bowl. That's
Yeah,
fun.
exactly. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit. So obviously, it's been, what, 5 years since
Hmm.
Aranda's been there. When he last was there, they were winning a national championship with was Joe Burrow the quarterback that year? I
Yep,
guess he
yep.
was. Yeah.
Coach O, Joe Burrow. It was that all-time LSU team.
Yeah, it was team was amazing, and defense was great too, and that's obviously what helped Aranda get the job at Baylor. Um, how do you view this matchup? Bryson Washington was talking after the Kansas game. Baylor's running back. He said, "Yeah, we would love to play an SEC school." I mean, always fun when you get a little Big 12 versus SEC.
Yeah, like I said, I think that this is um, it's great. I think everybody has this big idea of the SEC that it just means more, right? And maybe it does. I think overall the talent in the SEC is way better, but I think that this team especially is out to prove something. They're out to prove that the 6 game winning streak is not a fluke. That all of these things that they proved over the last half of this year um, are for real, and that they're for real. And I think to do it against a team like SEC, like LSU, with all the history that they have and all the winning that they have, like it's set up for some pretty good stuff, especially when you look at the big picture and where Baylor wants to go to next year. I think Baylor rightfully is going to have big expectations next year. And I think this bowl and what they're doing sets them up perfectly for where they want to go next year.
Yeah, you always want to try to win your last game. If you're in the playoff, you definitely want to try to win your last game. Baylor's not in the playoff, but there's just something to the momentum that gives you headed into the off season. And you asked Aranda a little bit about that on a press conference
Mhm.
yesterday, right?
Yeah, and he said very succinctly that, some of the practices that they're going to have are going to be foundational, is the word that he used, which I
Mm.
think is, that's huge because, like, we think about, we all know Sawyer Robertson and Bryson Washington and, Keaton Thomas and some of these players that are going to be back next year that are such key figures in what Baylor wants to be. But what we don't really know is, all right, what does Nate Bennett like actually look like when he gets a run out with the ones, or who is that other linebacker that's going to step up for Matt Jones? And I think this next month of the season is really going to give him a chance to see who steps up and give him some real in-game, reps, as Dave Aranda was saying. And I think so. I think it's crucial. And he was very honest. And I think it's like I said, I think it's huge.
Yeah, how about LSU? You mentioned that obviously they were, in the running for the playoff there for a while. They finished 8-4. Um, Brian Kelly's still there as the Tigers coach. Always felt like kind of an unusual fit for me.
Yeah,
Especially when
family.
remember when he was
Dude,
trying out the Louisiana accent there for a
that's
while.
my family. I know I'm not one to do accents on this podcast. That hasn't. Don't let me go back to the I'm
I
walking
love
here.
it. I love it.
Family. I'm. Don't get
Oh,
mad
by
at
the
me,
way, and
Brian
I may
Kelly.
have told you this, but when we were in New York for Thanksgiving for the Macy's parade and everything with Millie, um, of course, every time I said it, my kids would just, shake their head. But there was one moment where it was just perfect, and a cabbie was like trying to turn against the light or something, and I was crossing the street, and I stopped, and I was like, "Hey, I'm walking here." So
That gives me anxiety just thinking about it. Oh gosh.
it was so fun. Uh, anyway, LSU, what do you make of them?
It's kind of a weird situation because I feel like, and I think I'm going to write about this next week. It seems like for Baylor, this bowl is like the culmination of like the next step. Like the vibes could not be higher in
Mm,
Waco. For everything that I like, we talked to Brian Kelly this morning. He had his Texas Bowl press conference, and everything that everybody but me was asking him was about kind of everything going wrong. It seemed
mm,
like it seems like LSU, by contrast to Baylor, it's kind of the vibes are very low. Like this is almost like I guess we'll go play in the Texas Bowl.
mm,
What? Sure, and that's probably where the two programs are. I mean, like you said, I mean LSU won a national championship in 2019. That's not too far ago,
mm.
too long ago, and Baylor, its recent history hasn't been the best. So that's probably just where the programs are. But I think for LSU, this is kind of a, you know, where are they? Like what kind of team are they? Like are they gonna like they have 14 players enter the transfer portal since it opened, whereas Baylor's had four. And so I think we're gonna see a very different LSU team than I think we saw during the regular season if you watched any LSU. And so while there's still definitely talent there, I just think it's gonna be different. And I don't know how, like, will it click? Will the motivation be there? All of those questions I think are fair. And, I don't know. But for Baylor, I think I think people are going to play and they're going to be motivated to win. Whereas LSU, I just don't know. I think the vibes are weird in Baton Rouge. And I think that's just kind of where they are.
Motivation goes a long way. And um, I know I may be mixing my metaphors here, but just to bring an example from another sport in here, when Baylor went up there to UConn last week to play basketball, of course, UConn pulled out a very tough, rugged win. It was 76-72, kind of an old school Big East type game in terms of the physicality of it, which I think benefited UConn. They ended up shooting a lot of free throws. Uh, After the game, the questions to Dan Hurley were in that vein of like, um, you know, how much did you need this game? And they needed it a lot because they had lost, three games at the Maui Invitational, and they had games against like Texas and Duke and stuff coming up. Uh, and at one point, Hurley was like, he started sort of going through all that, and he said, uh, "Does that keep me up at night?" Oh no, not at all. Like like very sarcastic. But so clearly, that was a long setup to say UConn was very motivated to beat Baylor.
Mhm.
They needed that win a lot, probably even more so than Baylor needed it. So the fact that Baylor may have the motivational edge against LSU in this Texas Bowl, I think that's that's a factor for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Um,
I think that this, I think especially Dave Aranda kind of mentioned it the other day too about like the recruiting class coming in, how this is, to the even more men, it was like literally the best class of his kind of Baylor era, and he wants to see like all the good vibes from that recruiting class and them coming in January. Like this is almost the first game for them too, which is, I thought that was an interesting thing. And I think that when you're talking about motivation, I think no one's going to be more motivated than the freshmen coming in to say, hey, we're part of a good program. And that goes a long way.
yeah. Uh, Gosh, where was I? I had another thought in mind and I just sort of lost it. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So you get a few weeks here to prepare for this game. I feel like Dave Aranda with a few weeks to scheme, that's scary for another team. I mean, that guy would probably come up with some stuff to try to, mess you up.
I mean, and he's been very, yeah, no doubt. Like I think the defense for Baylor hasn't been the best. I know
No.
he's the defensive coordinator, and I think on signing day he mentioned that that's where they're targeting in the portal with, defensive backs and they want a linebacker and defensive line, all of these things. And I think that there's probably more motivation on that side of the ball than anywhere. And if you're looking at your depth and you want people to step up, like no better chance than right now when it's either going to be someone already in Waco or they're going to go get another defensive back in the portal. So I agree. I think the Baylor defense is going to we might see a different look and a much more improved Baylor defense. That's a great prediction.
Hmm. Baylor has a few Houston guys on its roster. I mean, you can't help but recruit when you're recruiting a state. You got, you're gonna have a few. Um, and I mean, I'm just saying that without even looking at the roster. I'm just guessing, but
Oh,
um,
they certainly do, without
yeah,
doubt.
but what I was going to say is, so they've been at the Texas Bowl a couple of
Mhm.
times, in since that bowl has been a thing. Uh, they went when Art Briles was there, and they played Illinois, and it was their first bowl game in 16 years, and that one didn't work out quite as well. The last time they went, they played Vanderbilt. Charlie Brewer had a great game. It was a high scoring game, and Baylor won. And Charlie had the cowboy hat for being the MVP, and that was kind of cool. But I was also going to say Baylor's last couple of trips to H Town have worked out okay. They played Rice there, few seasons back, just at Rice's dumpy stadium. Gosh, I can't believe that thing hosted a Super
I
Bowl
was gonna
one
say it
time.
hosted a Super Bowl, didn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. Uh, there was like nobody there. But Baylor won that one. And then, of course, you and I were in Houston not that long ago, made our obligatory Bucky stop after the game. But Baylor beat the Cougars that night. That was not the best performance by the Bears, but they pulled out a win. So I don't know. Maybe the last, few trips to Houston will give Baylor some good vibes. I do think, there's a lot of Baylor alums, obviously centered in Texas.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a hotbed for LSU too. That Houston
Right.
area, but so I expect it'll be a decent crowd, wouldn't you think?
Oh yeah. I mean, like that's an easy trip from Waco.
Hmm.
That's like it's
A
easier than
good,
Orlando, that's for sure. And I
right, and
think that more to what you've been writing about a lot this season, like don't you think Baylor is now kind of cool to hang out with?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that was the thing that Aranda said was we've gotta show people we're, cool enough to, come sit at the lunch table with and I think they've done that. And you know, to the point of I made about Aranda and his time to devise some things, it'll be fun to see what Spav comes up with for this game. I mean,
Mhm.
the offense has been a lot of fun. It really has. I mean, Bryson Washington has just taken off. We've talked a lot about Sawyer Robertson and what he's done all year. I just freaking love Josh Cameron. I mean,
The
that
best.
kid,
The best.
yeah, to me, he's one of just the best stories on the team. So yeah, they've been a lot of fun to watch, and that's such a contrast to last season.
And it, I like, and I, Coach Kelly, Brian Kelly, he called out Jake Spavital, and he's like, they've been doing just a good job of like mixing it up. Sometimes it's Sawyer's game, sometimes it's, you know, Bryson's game, and they have a bunch of receivers, not just Josh, Ashton and Hal and Monterey had a big game in Kansas against Kansas. So like they do a good job of mixing it up and throwing people off, and that's been the calling card. And you're right, it has been so much fun. It's just been they've been making offense look easy, which you could not say last year.
Mm.
But
Well, it'll be fun to spend New Year's Eve in H-Town. Certainly for me. I mean, that's the motherland for me. But
they
yeah,
said, do the
that'll be
Rockets play that day? Like, can you do
uh
it? Can you double up?
yeah, beautiful. It'll also be actually Baylor basketball's Big 12 opener that day, so we'll have to have Michael Haig or somebody cover that one for us. But should be a lot of fun. I'm going to give a shout out here. So my niece is a freshman at LSU, and she's on the dance team. So I suspect
Oh.
she'll be there for sure. Um, and she's the older sister of uh, the nephew that I went and saw play last week at Cypress Bridgeland High School, which is a Houston area high school. They played Duncanville. I didn't. I should have given this shout out on the high school podcast, but I didn't. But played Duncanville tough. Duncanville's Duncanville. I mean, they're number one in the state. But my nephew ran for over 250 yards and two touchdowns, including like a 70 something yarder in the
Mm.
rain. Um, so I was very proud of him, and that was cool to see. It was the most yards anybody's run against Duncanville all season. So
Was Dave Aranda there? I mean, do they need the second coming of Bryson
Dave,
Washington?
keep your eye on Cash Schwab is his name. He's just a sophomore, so class of 27. So there you go. That would be cool to see. He's already got some offers, so people are paying attention. But all right, it won't be the last time we talk about Baylor LSU. We'll do another pod before the game. Get some Baton Rouge folks on here. Should we get Kim Mulkey on our podcast?
I'm gonna let you take care of that one since you have such a great relationship with her.
Oh my gosh, that would be the liveliest podcast ever. Trust me. All right, Zach, appreciate you, man.
See ya.
See ya.